Hello and welcome to the LA Venture Podcast. This is Minnie Ingersoll, host of the podcast and partner at TenOneTen. TenOneTen is an early stage venture fund based in Los Angeles. We're all technical founders who like to invest in technical founders. As one of LA's earliest seed funds, we've gotten to know the other investors here, and this podcast is a fun way for us to catch up with some of the other great LA investors. Hamet Watt is an all-around LA innovation all-star. Hamet has just announced his new venture foundry, Share Ventures. Hamet has been a board partner at Upfront since Upfront was called GRP. He's also a co-founder and former chairman of MoviePass and co-founder and former chairman of Be Life, a wellness innovation company that sounds like it has some similarities to what he'll be doing at Share. Hamet, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So congratulations on Share Ventures.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been in the works for a little while. It's the whole venture studio model has been of interest to me for a long time. So I'm really feeling good and excited about where we are.
Cool. Great to see it happening. So, so tell me about what it is.
Yeah. So I'll give you the backstory. I've always been sort of curious about being able to do more than one company at a time. And that pushed me into studying firms like Idea Lab and Google X and Pioneer Square Labs and others that are in the space, in this venture studio space. And so I met with as many people as I could in the world of venture studios, and to some extent incubators. I'd say sometimes incubators are similar to studios, sometimes they're very different. But I think in this day and age, I felt like, actually this is pre-COVID, but I felt like with the number of tools that we have to discover product market fit on new ideas and the speed that we can actually develop products, it kind of necessitates a new way of thinking about company building. And I got really excited about just the timing being right to do this, and was fortunate enough to be working with some folks that believed the time was right as well. And so we've been able to raise some capital. Grateful to the Upfront Ventures team. It had just a great experience working with them, and they're early investors in Share, along with Alpha Edison and several others. So yeah, we're off and running. We're focused on what we call human performance, which is a kind of a fancy way of talking about health and wellness, I guess. We're looking at some big problems in how we live, or trying to solve some big problems in how we live and how we work. And so things like sleep and mental health and nutrition are all super interesting to us on the future of living. And then on the future of working, we're thinking about teaming and culture and lots of things that we think will need to change in the way that we work.
So just pausing on a second on the studio model. Is studio and foundry, I mean, obviously I know, but for my listeners who don't know, are studios and foundries kind of the same thing?
You know what? Yeah, we started off, we like the word foundry, we like the word lab, but you know what? The term of art, I think, is now like venture studio. I think most people refer to company building companies as studios. So I actually don't know how to distinguish between a foundry and a studio. They're kind of the same kind of thing. But we're definitely different than accelerators or what I guess people might think of as traditional incubators, where you're just a space and you invite, companies to come in and they pay you a little bit of rent and you help them with a little bit of legal or finance. That's not our model. We're actually planning on staying with our companies a bit longer than many others. Some will experiment and then immediately hire on a CEO and raise outside capital. I think, and that, we're flexible in this, but I think so far we're going to spend a little bit more time using the machinery that we've built to ideate and validate and launch. And we're going to spend more time in that process before we're then building out entire management teams. And, our goal is that we are de-risking these ventures a lot more and getting a much clearer line of sight, if you will, on product market fit.
Tell me more about why human wellness, I guess, or human performance. Is that what you're calling?
Yes. Is that not a good term? Because you know what, you're not the only one that's that stumbled
Well,
on.
here's the connotation. Here's the tiny connotation. Like, I like to go on a run, and maybe this just makes me old. I don't really like to know how far I went. I don't want to know what my heart rate is. Like, I don't want to be maximized. But so tell me the goal of the human performance focus.
Yeah, so human performance in our definition goes definitely just beyond like quantified self. Certainly some quantified self things are very interesting, but we're really looking at so many of the things that we do in our daily lives to make ourselves better that need to be reimagined. And so there's some big areas that we're looking at. We really think a lot about brain health. And yes, I'm being intentional in calling it brain health instead of mental health, because I think there's going to be some sort of nomenclature changes that hopefully address some of the stigma. We know how big the problem is. We know how necessary it is for all of us in our daily lives. And so being able to think about that space in a new, well-branded, design-driven way is really interesting to us.
Wait, can I just pause there?
Sure.
Yeah, I want to learn about brain health. Are there certain things in brain health that we should be doing today, or what are the components? I guess sleep is a big one, obviously. How do you think about brain health?
Consumers, what we should be doing?
Yeah, I want some tips. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you know what? I think yes. The short answer is yes, especially in this day and age. And I know you are super healthy and thoughtful, so I'm sure you're doing a lot of these things. But many of us need reminders, and I think there's so much incredible opportunity to democratize some of the things that many have at their disposal, like therapy or executive coaching or even certain types of training. And I think there's an incredible opportunity to use technology to democratize some of those things so that lots of people can do that. So, hundreds of millions of people one day will have a coach, in our opinion. And those are the kind of opportunities that we're talking about. We've also been looking at a lot about what's happening in work. And of course, all of us are looking at the future of work. But, what would happen to me when I was spending more time on the pure venture side is I would say, well, hey, how come no one's doing, blank for this? How come no one's doing something in this space? It seems like there could be a really big market. I always have that feeling. And, sometimes I'd find a team and they were great and they'd want like a 500 pre for their, very early stage business or something. Or sometimes they just, maybe they didn't feel like they were taking the right approach on the product. And so that's actually one of the reasons why I got so excited about the studio model. If we feel like there's something that needs to be done, we'll, do a very deep investigation into it. And we'll look at all the players that are playing in the space. And if we still don't see something that exists in the market in the way that it should exist, we'll start that company.
That's great. It's kind of the dream, actually. I kind of want to start 100 things. Maybe you're not. How many things would you start at once?
By the way, because it's the dream, and it's also the danger, right?
Yeah.
You have to be very careful on, how many things we can do and do well. And so we have invested in some tools and some people on the team that are really focused on getting the infrastructure right at the studio so that we know what, and I'm putting in quotes, air quotes, the capacity of our plant needs to look like, how many things we can do well at one time. We think right now it's around 2 to 4 new ventures a year, and it will take us a while to get towards the top end of that range. We're still building out our team now. And so that's a big part. So to get to those 2 to 4, we're doing lots of experiments on many others. And, we're choosing to take an approach, and it's part of our value system and culture, to be extremely optimistic about the future, but also extremely pragmatic in how we execute and how we do things.
Yeah, no, I feel like you're always very thoughtful. Like you've sort of studied innovation a lot more than most have. In fact, did you tell me, what is your podcast going to be on? You're going to start a podcast, a rival podcast, right?
Yeah, not a rival, a synergistic podcast.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so we've been playing around, and we have a number of neuroscientists that are advisors that have been mentors of mine or advisors over the years that really get into behavior change, and I really love and just geek out on behavior change. And I always find myself calling on some of these folks. There's a guy named Bob Builder who is the head of the neuroscience research lab at UCLA, and he has done some really cool research. And like even when we were dealing with the George Floyd murder and riots and all the stuff, like I called him on that. Like I want to understand the psychology of how people react to things, but we want to talk about the psychology of shit, the psychology of stuff, the psychology of hiring, the psychology of firing, the psychology of innovation. So we're calling it Your Brain On, but it'd be like your brain on whatever. And most of the topics will be entrepreneurial topics and company building topics. But maybe we'll delve into some other things every once in a while too.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm super curious on how you get people to change. I know that's a big question, but like just in my lifetime, the consumer norms of behavior, like I have this great photo of my mom smoking a cigarette 9 months pregnant at the doctor's office, right? And
love that. You should put a picture of that in the
different times. But you know, like everyone wears helmets now or seatbelts or diet sodas are like not cool to drink anymore. So like a lot has changed. I'm like, how do you have those changes that are the big changes for the better? Like how can we move society towards more of those?
You know what? A global pandemic doesn't hurt to change behavior.
Yeah.
It is obviously there's a lot of really bad things that are happening, needless to say, with this. But you think about the last crisis and the behavior change that triggered, and then what new opportunities emerged from that. And so I think there are those kind of things that are happening now. We're already seeing it. Remember when it used to be like, I don't know, you go to a partner meeting and the team would present and they'd say, oh yeah, we're all distributed. And then there's always someone that would just kind of snicker and like, oh, we're not even in the same room. And it used to be a little bit like, it used to be very much a mark on a company. I don't know that that's going to be the case anymore. Right? Maybe we've changed our behavior for life on that. I don't know.
Or just, I mean, I still am hearing, but I think we'll get there. I'm still hearing people say, oh, we can't fund a company that we haven't met in person. Maybe some LPs might say that.
People saying we've just funded our first company that we never met. Like it's happening now. Like people are experimenting with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's exciting.
Have you guys done a deal yet where you haven't met the team in person?
Totally, but like I'm all. I've done a lot of hiring. Actually, I've hired people who I've never met in person, and it's gone really well. So yeah, no, I think we're all going to get there. We just have to grumble about it a little bit more.
Well, the thing is, like, forced behavior change is always a good way to have behavior change, because then you try it and you're like, you know what, it's just not as bad as I thought it was. You know, let's keep doing this.
Yeah. Are there any other things coming out of this crisis that you think have been like, oh, that was a really good forced behavior change for us all?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing to see what's happening in the digital fitness space as well. Right. I mean, I think there's some studies that were released. I want to say that MindBody did a study on just fitness and fitness behaviors, gym going behaviors. And the stat I remember is 56% of everyone that has a gym membership is planning on canceling it because they have found digital alternatives that are more than sufficient for their fitness needs. So that just as one example, another behavior change that is happening at scale. But yeah, I think even things like the way we think about teaming and the way we think about hiring and the way we think about what it takes to do that, I think all those behaviors are changing. The way we think about building our cultures for our companies is changing. When you can't rely on ping pong tables and foosball and water coolers and nights out on the town, you have to think about new ways, possibly that are more deep around getting aligned on mission and purpose to really get at what's important when we work and when we work together and when we're happy about our work.
That's really interesting. I feel like I've seen people kind of take the old model and try to put it via Zoom. kind of the way you'd see like, oh, we used to have theaters, like performances, and now we have movies, but it hasn't caught up yet. Like it still feels like you're taking the old model and just putting it on Zoom. But it'll be interesting to see how that inoculation, like culture stuff happens online.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I think another area, and I think you and I have talked about this before, but gosh, I hope that education this is the catalyst that changes the way that education gets done, right? Because it always bugged me that it felt like the online learning was just like trying to take a classroom setting, which most of the time was kind of messed up anyway, and wasn't as thoughtful as it could be, and just putting it to a screen. And now maybe we hopefully can get at, a more personalized approach to learning. Now that we've had this forced behavior change for online learning, now maybe we're able to go to the next level of what that means.
Yeah. I also think, it's been interesting to watch learning change so much towards social emotional development. Like these things seem kind of linked, human behavior and education, in our education institutions. Let's talk about work for another second. I kind of feel like jobs increasingly are making people stressed out rather than like making them feel fulfilled or something.
You mean the whole Zoom, the Zoom daily?
No, I mean it more broadly. I mean it, unfortunately, I just mean like work is not, well, maybe it's changed. I don't know. Tell me more about the future of work is a better question.
Yeah, no, but I think you're onto something about just the stress. So tell me what you mean more about like the way that.
I think it's maybe the always onness. Like I sometimes just like, oh, if only I were a dentist and I would come home and at 6 o'clock, I wouldn't have any more work to do.
Right. Yeah, no, I guess, I don't know. I'm honestly, I'm struggling with that as well. We have a couple of behavioral psychologists and organizational psychologists that are trying to help us think through all these spaces and the future of work. And that's one thing we'll have to crack, which is how do you put a line in, because everyone can intellectualize it and say, okay, well, at a certain time, it's time to shut down and not be accessible or what have you, but damn, it's hard. I don't think this is what the science says or what doctors would say, but I really get immersed in the work that we're doing. I have so much fun doing it. I just try to treat it like a sport, but I think the goal is just to make sure that there are other things that, I really love spending time with my family. So I think just as I really love working, I need to, when I'm spending time with my family, just really enjoy that and immerse myself in that world.
You've been innovative multiple times. You're starting a studio to be innovative. Where do you think that, and you say you still love it. So where does that come from for you or more broadly?
Yeah, I'll talk more broadly first, because I also am a senior advisor over at BCG who does a whole lot of innovation work with big corporates, and it's fun to see them do it too. So I'm studying it from many perspectives, and I do think that it starts with just being a curious person in general, and being curious and oftentimes frustrated with the status quo. And sometimes that frustration combined with that curiosity drives you to say, hey, well, why the hell isn't anyone trying to design something for this? And I think about so many things that took forever to come to reality that weren't necessarily technological breakthroughs. Sometimes they're just design breakthroughs that happen. And so since I don't code, it actually is inspiring to say some of these things may be design driven, and it just requires the right kind of thought and experimentation to solve a problem. One example I always point to, and I'd love for someone, maybe one of your listeners has done some research on this, but it's crazy. This is a silly thing. Okay. The wheel's been around forever, right? The box that we carry shit has been around forever. It took forever for someone to think about putting on a suitcase, having a wheeled suitcase. You remember before, back in the day, when you didn't have a wheeled suitcase, you used to have to carry it. Maybe you're too young to remember, but you used to have like a damn suitcase you just hold, right?
Funny.
Then someone put wheels on it. And then it took another 20 years for them to put 4 wheels on it, so that you actually just had that roller and you don't need to, prop it up.
Right.
And I just use that as an example for so many things that may seem obvious, but it took years for designers or product people to actually pull all together. So I still think there's some of those innovation opportunities hiding in plain sight that a lot of folks can go after. One of our advisors, again, the same advisor I mentioned, he's a neuroscientist. He got commissioned by this hedge fund guy to study the most innovative people in the world, the most innovative and creative people in the world, and to study their brains and their behaviors. So he looked at their journals and their diaries and their calendars, and as well as putting them under an fMRI and looking at their brains. And so after he did that study, I was like, Bob, what's the secret? What is it about the most innovative people in the world? And he said, and he broke it down, and he said some of the things were really obvious and some of the things were really not so obvious. The obvious things were things like the volume of work, right? So Picasso had, I think, 50,000 paintings or something like that. Like just the volume of work, the sheer volume allowed you to pick out things that were innovative amidst all that work that you did. And then the other thing that was a little less obvious was the ability for people to combine seemingly disparate worlds to come up with something new. And so the example I always like to use is a little bit more simple, but it's like fusion food, right? You combine one cuisine with the next, and all of a sudden it's actually tasty. Or it's a new flavor or a new sort of culinary innovation. And so he said that he saw that the pattern suggested that people's, I guess, longer term memory for these seemingly disparate concepts, but they could pull them together in efficient ways to consistently develop innovative or creative works. So I saw that as one that was really, I think that's a framework that I think about often when I think about innovation.
I really like that. I think it's interesting, the prolific. Yeah, if you're prolific, it's not about percent hits, it's absolute number, you're bound to do something innovative, and it's a muscle, right? And I think I just had D.A. Wallach on the show, and he talked about like musicians, they listen to tons of music all day. And so, you're building that muscle by being innovative. It's interesting, the curiosity thing too. Yeah, I mean, I think people have curiosity directed in different directions. And you have a curiosity also around like business models or businesses.
Yeah. And design. I think I
design.
I'm not a designer, but we have a lot of designers that are we're bringing into our firm and that are in our ecosystem. And I have always found myself, when I'm looking through an investor lens, being very attracted to design-driven products and designer-led companies. And so that's part of our thinking and framework.
Okay, so scale of 1 to 10, how mentally fit are you?
Oh, wow. On a scale of 1 to 10, how mentally fit am I?
I'm just throwing it out there.
You know what? I think if I break down what mentally fit is, I think a biggest part of being mentally fit is being resilient. And only we know how resilient we are, which, by the way, was another one of Bob's secrets to the most innovative people. They are more resilient. So they have that stick-to-itiveness. They keep going and they don't let themselves get taken out of their game. And so I'm a pretty resilient person. And I think it's because I'm intentional about it. I talk to myself when I'm being hard on myself. I talk to myself and I try to coach myself into the right direction. So I still think I'm in the, for some reason, 7.75 comes up. I'm being really honest.
That's good. That's good.
There, I would absolutely like to be 9. And I think I'm working towards that, but I still beat myself up sometimes too much. And I don't know where that's from. I don't know if it's from, being in industries where, folks are tough, or, my dad is pretty tough. So I think when I do, and we all beat ourselves up to some extent, but when I do beat myself up, I just want to make sure the net outcomes are net positive out of that. And I think oftentimes when we beat ourselves up, the outcomes suffer because you're not fully in the game. And so That's really where I'm working.
Yeah, it can be motivating to beat yourself up a little bit, to drive yourself harder. It was interesting. Okay, so you interviewed Ice Cube on stage. I saw it. It was awesome. Yeah. And do you remember, like, I think it was one of your first questions was, has it gotten any easier? And you know what he said?
What did he say?
He said no.
No. Yeah.
Which surprised me. I mean, you look at all the different things he's done, you'd think he's sort of at a pinnacle of success.
You think, but you know what? He like others, and I shouldn't say like others, because there's not that many people that do what he does, which is just trying new shit, just trying something that's totally out of his comfort zone. Like, he's made a few jumps. So he started as a rapper, and then he said, I'll try my hand at being a producer, and then I'll try my hand at being an actor, and then I'll try my hand at being an entrepreneur, and then I'll try my hand at being a sports owner. So, like, all those things are new muscles that you have to build, because you're inevitably not going to be perfect when you're starting something new, or maybe not even be good when you start something new. So somebody's going to talk shit about you and say, what are you doing, dude? You're not good at this. And you have to be strong enough to be able to come back and say, well, you know what? I'm going to be better on the next one. Before you know it, that resilience muscle is as strong as it could ever be.
I mean, that was a related question, which is like, why do you think people don't bet on themselves?
I think it's that it is that self-talk that this is all a mind game, right?
Yeah.
It's all a mind game. And so if you're in your own head and you're worried and you've got too much negative self-talk and you're beating yourself up and not realizing that it's making you less capable or less likely to perform in whatever you're doing, or even worse, maybe you have that negative self-talk and you're not even fully honest with yourself. And so you might have that negative self-talk, but project a much different, more confident attitude than you actually are. And that creates a whole thing that you have to live up to. And then you won't try new things because you're worried about perception. And that gets into a soup that's not as fun to play in. And so, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. I also think, I think there's also, like, your friends can talk you out of things too. Like, I feel like I'm very sensitive sometimes to someone saying, like, "Oh, why are you doing that?" Like, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do it.
100%. I completely agree. That's right. It's either yourself or you're someone next to you. And that's sometimes it could be a loved one, right? I think even as I go through this journey with Sharon, we've got all these new ventures that we're working on. In some cases, they're science driven. In some cases, they're design driven. We're careful with who we talk about these new babies, if you will, these new companies.
Yeah, they're sensitive.
They're sensitive. You don't want anyone to call your baby ugly at the wrong time, because it might impact how things go. And it's just part of the journey. It's not to say that, these early things, of course, there's a time where you want someone to pick out all of the flaws, and that you want those things to be the things that you laser focus on, the flaws. But when you're just getting going, and I think this is relevant for anyone starting a company, when you're just getting going, I think you have to be thoughtful on who you talk to and when. And people could be very well-meaning and say, oh, well, that's stupid because of X, Y, and Z. And that might be helpful, right, to hear at the right time, but it also may not be helpful, because you need to be in the right mind space to push past all those flaws.
It's kind of empowering. I like it. I have nervousness for me sometimes doing a podcast, like just putting your voice out there. But let's stick with the entrepreneur journey. Like, so are you still affiliated with Upfront, but you were at Upfront for many years as a board partner or a venture partner?
As a venture partner, then I transitioned to a board partner, and I'm still a board partner at Upfront. And I have a couple of boards that I sit on for them. So part-time, and really we're Upfront and I are very aligned, because they're also invested in Share. And so really all of my energy is going into Share and the companies that we're creating. And then I also am very proud to be on a couple boards of companies that Upfront is invested in.
That's great. Do you have any thoughts? You've been around Upfront. Do you have any thoughts for entrepreneurs who are approaching Upfront? Just how to navigate Upfront or what to be?
The name says it all. Be upfront when you
Right.
go meet with Upfront.
Oh.
Just a very great group of people that have not only incredibly smart, but have their hearts in the right places and really want to do well by the entrepreneurs and build really great companies. So I think, I do think that every firm is different. Spending time with you and some of your partners at TenOneTen, you're different than Upfront, and Upfront's different than Crosscut, and everyone has their different, just like any other personality. I would say that, again, the name does say it all with Upfront. It's a very upfront group of people.
But I always took the name to mean that Upfront was going to be upfront with me as the founder. Like Upfront was going to be upfront towards me, as opposed to, hey, the way to approach Upfront is to be upfront. I hadn't quite taken that as a two-directional thing.
Yeah, I think that your initial understanding is probably the right first understanding, but I think it does go both ways. I think because the firm is upfront, they appreciate the authenticity and the directness from the entrepreneurs. Yeah,
that makes sense.
I couldn't start a firm that was just a version, a different version of Upfront. I want to do something very different, and many people will hate on what we're doing, and they'll say it's stupid for X, Y, and reason or whatever, and that's fine. We'll embrace that. We have deep conviction that not only is the model that we're focused on right, but the location, the idea that our model can also unlock Black and underrepresented entrepreneurs, scientists, executives, designers, many folks that may not be as likely to participate in the innovation ecosystem or as able to participate from an equity standpoint in this world, will now be able to do more of that.
I mean, I sometimes forget that this is an audio podcast and you're Black. I'm very white. Do you think we should just?
I think people can't they tell by the voice and the
maybe
they think you're Black and I'm white. I don't know.
I don't think so. I think they can tell. But I mean, we're clearly in a historic moment right now. I mean, hopefully historic moment, right? Here's a question. Do you think more people notice or something that you're Black or care, or it's a bigger thing? It's changed a lot for me just being female in tech and in business.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, I think, and honestly, I'm surprised by it. If you would have asked me, because the problem that we've seen, the social justice problems have been front and center, obviously, for all of my life, right? I've always felt it and seen it and experienced it as a 6'2" African-American, 6'2", 210 African-American person from Washington, D.C. I've had a Glock in my face more than one time, right?
God.
Mistaken identity every time, right? So we obviously,
really?
This is an experience that everyone has had some very direct experience. So it's not new. But if you would have asked me that one day there would be kids in Japan protesting for Black Lives Matter, I would never have believed you. Ever, ever, ever. So the fact that we're seeing that level of support, it feels great. It really does feel great. And I think I'm seeing it also with institutions that are tackling this head on. And so, I think there are many more conversations that we're able to have now than ever before. And frankly, when we do have those conversations, I believe the people are significantly more present than they were before as well.
You've left me very inspired by this whole conversation, and I sort of
Thank you.
Picked me up. It's been really nice. I kind of think that's a great note to end on, unless we miss some big things on Share.
No, it's great. I enjoyed the conversation, as I always do with you. So I appreciate your inviting me on, and let's do more of this together. Maybe you can come on Your Brain On.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Hamet.